Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Duger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. Our guest today is Holly Lammer, a registered nurse certified in inpatient obstetric nursing, with more than 25 years of experience in low and high-risk births. Her observations of birthers and her studies in pre- and perinatal psychology and in mindfulness led her to develop a mindfulness and energetics-based birth education program. Holly teaches this program locally for her hospital system in Idaho and has now expanded it to both a self-paced online program and the publishing of her new book, Intelligent Birthing, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern Birthing World. Through the years, Holly has spoken at professional conferences locally and nationally to help educate professionals and birthers alike about the importance of gestation and birth on lifelong health and happiness. Holly was also the co-host of the Mindful Birth, Peaceful Earth podcast with Jamie Crockett, which published 49 episodes. Holly is a parent and a grandparent, and her mission has been to water the seeds of peace for the next generation. Welcome, Holly. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
So, can you share a little bit about your work and how you came to be doing this work in the world and how you came up with your program?
This actually started way back when I was pregnant with my first child, 36 years ago. And it was just such an amazing proverbial calling that you get. As soon as I got pregnant, literally, it was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be around birth. I think it's amazing. And so I went to nursing school because at that time, I wanted to go the nurse midwifery route. And eventually landed a job in labor and delivery, which was my dream, of course. And from the very beginning, I just remember being like so amazing. And I was in full on learn mode. And then I started to notice things in the hospital that just were very uncomfortable for me. So a lot of practices in the hospital system that I work at, we have a pretty high induction rate. So a lot of inductions, different things that were just making me uncomfortable. I'm the kind of person who likes to try to figure out why I'm uncomfortable. I did a lot of education around induction and things like that, and then realized that a lot of things that we were doing were just not at all evidence-based. So I spent a lot of my nursing career in the hospital, what I would say, fighting for the rights of patients, not just the birthing family, but the baby. And then because that was a stressful experience, I started delving into, a lot of times when you practice mindfulness, a lot of it comes from maybe there's some struggle you have in your life. I had been teaching aerobics classes for a long time and then started into yoga. I went to a yoga school here in town and I did my senior project on prenatal yoga. At that same time, I started attending a local meditation sangha that's in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh. And that really changed my life because I'm interested in why does this happen? And I started really looking at the research behind mindfulness and why it works and how it works. So it's this perfect cascade of events. I also heard about birth psychology, APA, and then I saw that they were having a conference in Berkeley. And I actually got money to go to the conference from my hospital. And it just blew my mind. All of the stuff that I'd already been studying about the hormones of birth and how they work and why it's really important to have a good birth experience, plus my study of yoga, which is the study of mindfulness as well. And then my studies into mindfulness and how it works, it just kind of coalesced into this thing that I started to offer. Originally, I offered it in yoga studios where it was like a mixture of yoga and then birth education. And I did teach the regular childbirth education class for my hospital system. During this time, I really couldn't stomach it. And one of the research points shows that traditional hospital-based birth education increases fear of birth, which causes a lot of problems. I work in a high-risk hospital, so we have a lot of preterm births and all kinds of complications. And everything that I learned in EPA and mindfulness practice and the research on mindfulness really just showed that a lot of the stuff that we were seeing was stress-related. So I got the ear of the local maternal fetal medicine specialist, and he's like, yeah, we need to teach mindfulness to these people. So he's the one who helped facilitate getting my program into the hospital. So of course I changed it from a yoga / childbirth class to pretty traditional 4-class series. But the emphasis was really about acceptance, meditation techniques, and practicing meditation to help decrease the effects of stress at the time you're pregnant, plus being able to bring those techniques into the birth experience itself. And I saw a lot of people unsatisfied with their birth experience because it didn't go how they expected it should go. Right. And this happens at home, by the way, too, and in birthing centers. But I think it specifically happens a lot in hospital birthing environment. So my mission was really to, acknowledge if you have complications and that you might need a little bit more help than somebody else. And also don't be attached to this plan, because it's that attachment, I feel, to the plan that causes the suffering afterwards. And then, I just really wanted to expand it and be able to offer it outside of just our local system. And that's why I wrote the book and also the self-paced online program.
And Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about non-attachment, right?
Yeah.
And so would you say that that was perhaps one of the more important things that someone who's about to give birth perhaps attaches to, the non-attachment of how things are going to go or not going to go, because there is so much unpredictability that can happen in a birth experience?
Yes. And it happens no matter if there's a complication or not. I think one of the main things that we have going on, first of all, is this stress build up before the experience itself. And the vast majority of births in the country happen inside the hospital. And we have regular practices that really don't support using your intuition. So my emphasis is always, first of all, trust your body. Because if you're pregnant right now, your body knows how to give birth. And not only that, but your baby knows how to be born. So you both have an intelligence built in, that intelligence of the body. That's why I call it intelligent birthing. Even if you have complications, that is going to help facilitate the best outcome and following the hormonal physiology. So when I first started this class, I didn't even teach about the stages of birth, because that is such a medicalized, westernized way of looking at things and dissecting it. And I better be progressing in this fashion. I was really emphasizing supporting the hormonal physiology as opposed to tracing the stages. And what I found, especially I feel like in our culture, we pretty much like to be in control all the time. And no matter if anything went awry during the birth experience or everything went completely wonderful, unmedicated, the birther's handling it really, really well. And afterwards, I'm like, that was so awesome. You did such a great job. A lot of times they would say, I didn't feel like I did a good job. And I'd be like, why? And they were like, because I felt totally out of control. And so what I'm really emphasizing is letting go of that sense that we have to control things, because the nature of birth is that you cannot control it. We think we can control it because we're getting induced and we have this plan and we have our playlist, but it still is so uncomfortable. I think in our culture specifically, we have a really hard time letting go of control. All you can control is moving away from that reaction and having a little bit of time to take a deep breath and how are we going to respond to what's going on in our body and also what's going on around us that we may not have any control over.
It's a really beautiful thing to think about the loss of control in birth in a positive way. If things are going well, obviously there are circumstances in which feeling out of control and like everybody else is having to manage things can feel really scary for people.
Mhm.
But thinking back to my own two births, that experience of understanding at some point that I really had to let go, like I'd heard it talked about, I'd studied about it. It's a very different experience to actually do it, right?
Yeah.
And it took getting to a certain point of, for me, exhaustion, and really understanding like, oh, my body's doing its thing, and this baby that's being born is doing her thing, and it's a very physiological experience in my body that I literally can't control. And if I can just let go, it will happen more easily
Yeah.
and probably faster
Yeah.
than if I'm trying to manage my breathing and manage this and manage that. At some point, I was too tired to do that. And at that point, once I fully let go, that's when I felt like I actually got birthed as a mother. So it was like this stepping into this new experience of feeling super empowered in that way, simply by letting go, which is very different than we think of. A lot of people think of empowerment as taking control and getting power. But in this experience, for me at least, it was the letting go of all that I thought I could do or knew how to do, and just
Right.
let my body kind of be the animal body that it was at that moment, and super empowering in that way. So it's like you're sharing a very different way of looking at what we believe or may believe culturally, and how that also is probably positive for the baby that's being born, right? To let them find their way into the world to the best of their ability. And
Right.
obviously, lots of things can happen, and sometimes we need support in helping that happen. But it's a very backwards way of looking at it in terms of our cultural beliefs in this country, at least.
I really like that you keep saying letting go because that's really the emphasis we've been talking about. But it's also, like you said, really difficult to do that in the moment. And what I've found in my research and in my own practice is when we practice mindfulness intentionally, the more we practice, the more we're able to let go of control. So that's one of the reasons why I developed this mindfulness-based program. And the research shows that it kind of beefs up the part of the brain that is responsible for allowing you to be able to let go of control. So literally on a brain science level, that's how that mindfulness piece is working. So when we're practicing that, hopefully even before we get pregnant and prenatally, not only are we increasing that bond with the baby in utero, but increasing our ability to do exactly what you said, hopefully sooner than I'm so exhausted, I just can't think anymore. I think that's a lot of people's experience. And like you said, when they reach that point, that's where I like to call it a transformation, right? So you're birthed into the mother at that time. Not only are you giving birth, but you are actually being born as a mother. My hope and desire is that people, if they're practicing a little bit of mindfulness beforehand, they go into it, maybe they can kind of let go of control a little bit sooner. But it's really hard to do. I always say birth, it's going to transform you somehow. And hopefully it's through this joyous, empowering transformation, or it could be a trauma. And we'd really like to come out the other side transformed and not traumatized.
The hospital setting is all based around control, right? It's like controlling symptoms, managing things, right? And so the idea that someone would be able to be in that space in a highly controlled environment may be extra challenging for some people,
Mhm.
without a lot of practice. And so you've also been trained in pre and perinatal psychology as an educator. And
Mhm.
how do you bring that into this work that you're doing in terms of the connection between the birthing parent and the baby?
First of all, that's the very beginning of my very first class that I teach. And in my book and on the program, I talk about APA and I lead them to the website and I tell them what pre and perinatal psychology is all about. And I just really emphasize in all of my work in my classes that intentional bonding to the baby. So it doesn't matter if we're doing a meditation where you visualize your perfect birth environment and it's literally doesn't have anything to do with the room. It's more like, what do you want it to smell like? What do you want it to look like? Do a creative visualization. And then we visualize people coming in and out of the room. And if you're in a hospital, it could be a lot of people that you've never met before and have them visualize that anybody who comes in the room is just surrounded by this peaceful golden light. And then bring your baby into the meditation. What would your baby want the room to look like? So no matter what the meditation that we do, we always end it with bring your baby into the experience. And one thing I particularly really love to do, because we talk a lot about interventions in my hospital birth class, whenever you're contemplating any of these things and considering them for your preference, I try not to use the word plan, ask your baby, what would you do? What would you want? How would you want to end the world? Do you want an epidural? Do you want to be induced? So for me, I really focus specifically on inviting the baby into the birth experience. And then, of course, we talk about the breast crawl and like the immediate postpartum period and how important that is. And a lot of times, what people really find striking, half the class always talks about how, oh, I bring my baby into the birth experience, I didn't even think about that. And then I do a lot of visualization and meditation on honoring the transformation that the baby's going through and being present with your baby no matter what you choose. So maybe you decide that you do want an epidural. How can you stay connected to your baby during that experience? Because now you can't feel anything, but your baby's still feeling all that stuff. Or if you do have to end up with a cesarean, or even if you have a planned cesarean for some reason, how are you going to stay connected to your baby during that experience? And we just kind of talk about ways that we can do that.
We've been speaking today with Holly Lammer, a registered nurse certified in inpatient obstetric nursing with more than 25 years of experience in low and high risk births. Her new book is out called Intelligent Birthing, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern Birthing World. Holly, could you share a little bit about how people can find out more about you, more about your program and your book, and maybe get in touch with you?
My website is just intelligentbirthing.com. There are links to buy the book on Amazon. There is also the link to the online program. And anybody who is listening today can get a 30% discount on that online program. You'll have it in the show notes, but it's FRIENDS30, FRIENDS 30. And you can use that discount code for 30% off of that online program.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Holly. It's a pleasure to speak with you and see you again.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It was really great to talk to you again, too.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.